He didn't mind being at home, so he would visit the pool before the tour buses, velvet ropes, or souvenir stores paused outside Graceland. All that existed was a home, one that was inhabited and inhabited. At midnight, it was occasionally still, and at other times trembled with the sound of footfall. And nobody in that house believed that woman would be significant. She had no family. The group did not include her. However, she was there every morning and night, clearing away the falsehoods and the ashes, and she saw the world's most well-known man crumble in private. For nearly a decade, Nancy Rooks lived in the shadow of the most renowned mansion in America. She knew what Elvis ate, but it was kept a secret. She could tell who had arrived late and who had departed early. She was also aware of the king's appearance without the cameras and lighting. For 40 years, until she was nearly dead, she remained silent. When she did, the story was completely revealed by her words. Her remarks also suggested something even more scandalous. Perhaps Elvis Presley wasn't dead when he showed up at Graceland as a stranger, and perhaps his death wasn't as tragic as we believe. A phone call started the story. It was merely a standard request from a staffing service, nothing significant. One of the maids was ill. There was a house on Elvis Presley Boulevard that needed someone to fill in. Despite not knowing what she was getting herself into, Nancy Rooks accepted the position. Only for a week or two, till the other girl returned. They informed her of this. But it was a house unlike any other. The beat, the fragrance, and the way time appeared to bend within its walls were all absent. Nancy arrived prepared to clean. Rather, she entered a society where silence was valued and one man's celebrity warped reality. Vernon Presley, Elvis Presley's father, immediately recognized something in her. She was dependable in addition to working hard. There was no secret discussion about the stars or swooning over them. Nancy remained calm. She had the appearance of a woman who could hear everything without talking and blend in with the wallpaper. She was told to stay by her supervisor. 10 years of living in one of the most renowned homes in American history quickly resulted from a modest courtesy. She didn't get the job because of who she knew. She had nothing to do with the Memphis Mafia. She has no pictures or sequins. Before the reporters could see them, she hurriedly prepared Elvis's midnight munchies, laid down his sheets, and cleaned his soiled clothing. She was actually the maid. She somehow transformed into something else. Elvis was staring at her in addition to her, not only as a helpful person, but also as a unique individual. She didn't ask for any signs. She didn't seek assistance. She simply arrived and stayed late. She had no questions. Although she had gentle eyes, Elvis might have realized that she knew everything. Midnight meals and soft music. Elvis was perceived by many as a busy, ostentatious man who wore a lot of rhinestones and infused every space with charm, commotion, and the weight of 1,000 demands. Nancy, however, spotted the one that no fan could ever approach. The one who, at midnight, yanked his robe around, rubbed his eyes, like a child who hadn't slept for days, and entered the kitchen barefoot. On sometimes, he would want fried pickles, an occasional peanut butter and banana sandwich. Sometimes he would just say, "Got any peach cobbler?" in a whisper. Then came the tunes. Not merely for amusement, as was the case with the popular church records. People were half singing and quiet at the kitchen table. Only he, Nancy, and Grandma Minnie were present. There isn't a stage or microphone. While everyone else slept inside, there were only 3 voices singing old church tunes into the silent air. It seemed as though the world was empty of other people. She was more than simply his food provider. Yes, exactly. She took a look. It was not long before she realized that something was amiss beneath the surface. There were evenings when his eyes didn't match his voice, when his laugh sounded artificial. He would gaze into the refrigerator, as if he had forgotten what hunger felt like. As though he didn't want to be alone, he kept returning, but he was unable to express it. Nancy witnessed something that will always hold significance for her during those quiet hours. It wasn't always Elvis who tried to be Elvis. Sometimes he just wanted to get away and be someone else. The bathroom door that refused to open. The second-story bathroom door became more significant than any other as the years passed behind the high walls of Graceland. On paper, it appeared to be just a room. However, for Elvis, it was a safe haven, a bunker where no one could reach him, not his family, not his hangers-on, not his managers, and not even ladies. No one was around to knock. Nobody had the courage to. Elvis only approached that door when it was life or death because it was so crucial. Among them was Nancy, the person he trusted the most. She wasn't certain even then. Cleaning wasn't the only activity taking place in the restroom. It served as a hiding place. Elvis refused to come out, respond, or move for minutes at a time, and then for hours and hours. The employees would ignore it and pretend everything was well. Nancy knew better than to do it. She began to search for patterns. He stayed for a long time, yet when he departed, he appeared different, less dazzling, slower, and hollow. Something was happening behind the door. Something that has everything to do with escape and nothing to do with celebrity. He was no longer fleeing from the cameras. Something seemed to be becoming closer and darker. Nancy started to worry that John would never return. The final glass of water. It was August 16, 1977, early in the morning. It was a day that would be discussed for years to come in movies and news reports. However, it seemed like any other day in that peaceful Graceland kitchen. Elvis had just returned from a late-night game of tennis. He was still breathing heavily, flushed, sweating, and joyful. After a game, Nancy had witnessed him perform the identical procedure countless times. She had already reached for the skillet. "Do you want something to eat, Mr. Elvis?" she would often ask. However, things were different this time. "Get out," he said. There was a strange silence, but not in a nasty way. "No, I just want water." Nancy handed him the orange juice jug, which was plastic. She will never forget what she witnessed next. Elvis had multiple drinks. He drank as though something inside of him had caught fire in the night, and he was thirsty. The water was holding him together, not cooling him down. He might have been too hot from the game, she thought. That's what she told herself. When they both witnessed how fast he had snatched it, she also informed Pauline that. It didn't feel right, though. His eyes flickered in a way she couldn't explain. It was like a cloud or a weight. No one else in the room seemed to be able to predict what was about to happen. It wasn't until he turned to go again that Nancy realized it was their final conversation. For 40 years, she concealed this sound. Others gained a lot of money from their time at Graceland by writing books, doing interviews, and creating TV specials. Nancy Rook said nothing. Nancy silently observed from a distance. She never told anyone anything, never took advantage of anyone, and never placed blame on anyone. They believed it to be love. Some believed it to be fear. However, those closest to her claimed it was something different, more difficult to describe. A weight, a promise, or a reality that is too burdensome to share with strangers. However, time wore her down, as it always does. She had trouble remembering things as her health deteriorated. "If you could tell the world just one thing about Elvis, what would it be?" someone asked during a tiny, quiet meeting one day, long after everyone else had stopped asking. The woman's hands caught her attention. A long pause ensued. Then she replied in a whisper, "I don't think he died the way they said he did." There was little fanfare when it was spoken. The news didn't cover that story. However, that sounded neither like a rumor nor a theory, nor even like sadness. The room fell silent. It seemed as though something more sinister and agonizing had been lurking beneath the surface for years, and was now beginning to emerge. Elvis concealed the books upstairs. When Nancy did speak, it was in a kind and non-angry tone. It was worn and moved slowly. A sound like that, one that has been too loud for too long. And she wasn't merely talking about medications, painkillers, or Presley's final hours. People didn't care to look, therefore nobody saw what it was about. Yes, there were medications. His energy levels were inconsistent, his schedule was disorganized, and his body was enlarged. But there were also heaps of literature about God, reincarnation, healing, meditation, and starting again in that upper bedroom. He didn't have a blank mind. He was searching softly and desperately. "I wish I could just be a man again, just a man somewhere quiet," he said to her one evening when they had some alone time. "Not a king, not a legend, and not Elvis." She knew what he meant without having to ask. She could see it in his expression that he was fatigued. There was desire underneath the charm. He wasn't fleeing from his life. He didn't want to be like Elvis. He hadn't given up, and she knew it then. The world wouldn't let him go, therefore it was still difficult for him. She understood deep down that he was running out of time to escape. She was awakened by something years after Elvis was laid to rest. At least not for Nancy. Graceland remained silent. She continued to work the night shift even after the guests had left and the lights had gone out. She started to notice the flickering lights, the shifting air, and the faint murmur of someone observing as she worked by herself in the vast hallways, dusting the glass cases of jumpsuits and gold records. As if it were a ghost story, she never discussed it. She wasn't like that. It was more like someone dropping in to say hi to Nancy. Even though it's invisible, you can sense it, particularly in the trophy chamber where Elvis Presley's attire appeared to be frozen in time. She was exhausted, and it was late at night. She took a moment to recover and lay down beside the exhibit cabinet. The room was silent until it wasn't. Something shook her foot hard and deliberately. She sat up quickly and looked around, her heart pounding. No one. She didn't yell. She did not flee. She just smiled as though it made sense. She uttered the words, "Mr. Elvis, I know what you did." I was supposed to wake up from that. Since she knew he was still there, patrolling the hallways and watching what belonged to him, she wasn't afraid. However, she was unable to sleep for days, since she was unable to determine if he was merely observing or attempting to share a final secret with her that no one else would dare to hear. The word that changed everything. A few months before her death, Nancy had a final conversation with her friend. No news team was there. There was only a friend, a silent recorder, and the sound of her heavy inhalations and exhalations. No lights or cameras. She wasn't depressed. It didn't sound any better because of her. As she had done for years, she just said the truth. "They say he overdosed," she said, "but I think he was just tired, both in his body and in his spirit." She paused for a long moment, as though she wasn't sure whether to continue. "He wasn't reckless that morning. He wasn't intoxicated. He just wanted to go to sleep." A narrative she had never recounted before was now told. If it hadn't been so hefty, no one would have heard it because it was so small and silent. A few days before he passed away, Elvis asked her, "Do you think people can start over?" She had fatigued eyes. "No," Nancy replied in the affirmative. She recalled grinning, but at the moment, she didn't give it any thought. Then he returned the smile. "Maybe I will," he replied. "Not like a joke, not like a dream, like a plan." He was not questioned about it by Nancy. It's possible that she didn't want to know. Nevertheless, that moment lingered in her mind like a secret that was too hazardous to share and too loud to keep. Because Elvis might not have ever intended to die if he truly believed what he said. In the kitchen, a ghost was present. Although Nancy and Elvis are no longer in the house, things are still hidden there. Some claim that when it's silent in between excursions, the lights flicker erratically, or the velvet ropes move slightly, they can feel him there. "He loved that house," Nancy wrote once. "He was concerned about us. I never thought he really wanted to go. Perhaps he didn't in some manner. If Elvis truly wanted to start over and leave everything behind, what stopped him? If he had survived to go out of that door, how would things be now?" If this video resonated with you, hit the like button, subscribe for more original tales, and view the next one on your screen. Then we discovered something you won't believe.